Have you ever walked into your garden in the morning and discovered that your plant leaves were eaten overnight? Have you ever sprayed your garden for pests during the weekend, only to see the same insects return a few days later? Have you ever wondered why pests keep appearing even when you take good care of your plants? And have you ever thought that perhaps you simply have not found the right pesticide yet? Many gardeners have experienced this exact situation. You spend time caring for your plants, watering them regularly, and providing nutrients so they can grow well. Yet in just a single night, leaves can be damaged by insects. When that happens, the most common response is to search for a pesticide that can remove the pests quickly. Spraying often provides a short period of relief. However, that relief usually does not last very long. Research in backyard gardening shows that most pesticides only suppress pest populations for about 5 to 10 days. After that period, insect populations often recover and begin to increase again. One reason is that many sprays only eliminate the insects that are visible at the moment of application. Eggs that remain hidden in the soil or on plant surfaces are often unaffected. When those eggs hatch, a new generation of insects appears, and the cycle begins again. Another factor is that pesticides can also affect beneficial insects in the garden. Insects such as ladybugs, lacewings, and parasitic wasps feed on aphids and many other plant pests. These natural predators play an important role in maintaining balance in the garden ecosystem. When pesticide use reduces their populations, the garden loses an important natural defense. As a result, pest insects can return more easily, and sometimes in even greater numbers. Looking at this pattern naturally raises questions. If spraying pesticides is truly the best solution, why do pests return so quickly? If the goal is to keep plants healthy, why do so many gardeners feel like they must repeat the same process week after week? Perhaps the issue is not only about the type of pesticide being used. Perhaps the issue lies in how the garden itself is designed. While exploring gardening practices from different parts of the world, I came across images of traditional Japanese kitchen gardens. These gardens were not large, but they appeared vibrant and full of life. Many different plants were growing together in the same space. Tomato plants were interplanted with herbs. Leafy greens were growing near flowers and aromatic plants. What stood out immediately was the condition of the plants. Leaves looked strong and healthy. There were fewer signs of pest damage compared with many gardens that rely heavily on chemical control. Even more surprising was the absence of pesticide sprayers or bottles. None of the typical chemical products that many gardeners rely on seemed to be present. This observation naturally leads to an interesting question. How can those gardens remain productive and healthy without constant spraying? The answer is connected to the way Japanese gardeners view their gardens. Instead of treating a garden as rows of separate crops, they see it as a living ecosystem. In that ecosystem, every plant interacts with the plants around it. Some plants release strong aromas that interfere with how pests locate their host plants. Other plants attract beneficial insects that feed on pests. When different plants grow together, the entire garden becomes more diverse and more balanced. This approach is related to a traditional Japanese agricultural philosophy known as Satoyama. Within this system, people do not attempt to dominate nature completely. Instead, they work alongside natural ecological processes. The garden becomes a place where plants, insects, soil, and people interact in a balanced relationship. Modern ecological research supports this perspective. Gardens that contain a greater diversity of plant species often experience fewer pest outbreaks. When plant scent structures and flowering cycles vary throughout the garden, it becomes more difficult for pests to locate their preferred crops. At the same time, beneficial insects find more food sources and shelter. Understanding this idea changed the way I think about gardening. Instead of seeing pests as enemies that must always be eliminated, I began to view the garden as a system that can be designed to maintain balance. When plants are combined thoughtfully, the garden itself can create conditions that reduce pest pressure naturally. Traditional Japanese companion planting methods illustrate this concept clearly. Certain plants are chosen not only for harvest, but also for the roles they play in supporting the health of surrounding crops. Seeing the garden in this way transforms the entire experience of gardening. The focus shifts away from constant reaction and toward thoughtful design. Over time, the garden begins to function more like a small ecosystem where many elements work together to keep plants healthy. Once a garden is viewed as a living ecosystem rather than simply a collection of separate crops, many things begin to make more sense. One of the most important ideas to understand is how insects actually find the plants they feed on. Most insects do not rely primarily on sight the way humans do. Instead, they depend heavily on scent and chemical signals released by plants. Every plant releases natural compounds into the air. These compounds create a unique scent profile. For many insects, that scent functions like a navigation signal. It helps them locate the plants that provide food for them, or for their larvae. When a garden is planted with a single crop across a large area, the scent of that crop becomes very strong and easy for insects to detect. In many ways, it is like placing a large sign that directs pests exactly where to go. This is one reason why gardens that rely heavily on single crop planting often experience more pest problems. In modern agriculture, this system is known as monoculture. When many identical plants grow together, pests only need to locate one plant to find a large and reliable food source. Once they find that first plant, it becomes easy for them to spread quickly across the entire bed. A garden filled with different plant species creates a very different situation. Instead of one dominant scent, there is a mixture of many plant aromas. For insects that depend on chemical signals, this mixture can make navigation more difficult. The scent of the target plant becomes harder to detect among many competing signals. Ecologists sometimes refer to this effect as scent interference or olfactory disruption. Agricultural research has shown that increasing plant diversity in a garden can significantly reduce pest outbreaks. Some studies suggest that pest pressure can decrease by 40 to 70% when multiple plant species are grown together rather than in large, single-crop blocks. This reduction does not come from eliminating insects entirely. Instead, it comes from creating a more complex environment where pests cannot easily locate or spread through their preferred crops. Another important benefit of plant diversity is the attraction of beneficial insects. These insects act as natural predators that help control pest populations. Ladybugs are one of the most familiar examples. An adult ladybug can consume dozens of aphids in a single day. When a garden provides flowers, nectar, and shelter, ladybugs are more likely to stay and reproduce within that environment. Lacewings are another helpful predator, commonly found in diverse gardens. Their larvae are particularly effective at feeding on soft-bodied pests, such as aphids and small caterpillars. In addition to these visible predators, there are also tiny parasitic wasps that play a powerful role in natural pest control. These wasps lay their eggs inside certain pest insects. When the larvae develop, they reduce the pest population from within. When beneficial insects become established, the garden begins to develop a natural form of pest management. Instead of relying entirely on external control methods, the garden starts to regulate itself. Pest insects may still appear from time to time because they are a normal part of the natural environment. However, their populations often remain low when predators are present in sufficient numbers. Understanding these ecological principles helps explain why many traditional Japanese gardens experience fewer pest problems. Gardeners in those systems rarely focus on growing only vegetables. Instead, they mix vegetables with herbs, aromatic plants, and flowers. Each plant contributes something to the balance of the garden environment. Among the many plants used in these traditional gardens, there is one that appears again and again because of its strong aroma and its ability to influence insect behavior. It is a plant valued in the kitchen, but also respected as a natural ally for protecting nearby vegetables. The plant that appears repeatedly in many traditional Japanese kitchen gardens is called shiso. This plant is widely used in Japanese cooking, but its role in the garden goes far beyond its culinary value. Many gardeners in Japan consider shiso to be an important companion plant that helps protect other crops growing nearby. Shiso has a very distinctive aroma. Even a gentle touch on the leaves releases a noticeable fragrance into the air. This scent comes from natural compounds produced by the plant. Among these compounds are substances such as perolaldehyde and limonene. These chemicals create the characteristic fragrance of shiso, but they also influence the behavior of many insects. For people, the scent of shiso is usually pleasant and refreshing. It is often used in salads wrapped around rice or added to various dishes. For certain garden pests, however, the aroma can be overwhelming or unpleasant. Insects such as aphids, flea beetles, and small mites often have difficulty locating their host plants in areas where strong aromatic plants are present. The reason this happens is connected to how insects search for food. As mentioned earlier, many insects rely heavily on chemical signals released by plants. When a vegetable plant releases its specific scent compounds, insects that feed on that plant are able to detect those signals and move toward the source. However, when a strongly aromatic plant like shiso grows nearby, the situation changes. The compounds released by the shiso plant mix with the scent of the vegetable crop. This can partially mask or disrupt the chemical signals that pests rely on. As a result, insects may struggle to locate the plant they are searching for. This process can be compared to trying to find a specific restaurant in a busy street filled with many different food smells. When only one smell dominates the area, it is easy to identify its source. But when many strong scents mix together, it becomes harder to locate the one you are searching for. In a garden, the fragrance of shiso can create a similar effect for pest insects. Japanese gardeners often take advantage of this natural characteristic by planting shiso near crops that are commonly attacked by pests. Tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, and cucumbers are typical examples. When shiso plants grow close to these vegetables, their aroma creates a protective environment that reduces the chances of pests finding the crops easily. A common planting pattern is to place one shiso plant every few vegetable plants along a row. The spacing is often around 30 to 40 centimeters, so that each plant has enough room to grow while still allowing the scent to spread throughout the bed. When several shiso plants are distributed across a garden, they form a gentle aromatic barrier around the vegetables. Another benefit of growing shiso is that the plant is useful in the kitchen as well as in the garden. The leaves can be harvested regularly and used fresh in a variety of dishes. This means that gardeners gain both a flavorful herb and a natural pest management partner at the same time. Shiso is only one example of how traditional gardens use plant combinations to support healthy crops. Japanese gardens also rely on other types of companion plants that provide similar benefits. Among these are members of the onion family, which release their own distinctive compounds into the soil and surrounding air. In many Japanese gardens, these onion relatives are planted among vegetables belonging to the cabbage family, such as cabbage, kale, or broccoli. Gardeners have long observed that this pairing helps reduce certain pest problems and contributes to a healthier growing environment. In addition to shiso, plants from the onion family also play an important role in many traditional Japanese gardens. One of the most common examples is a type of onion known as negi, often referred to as Japanese bunching onion. This plant is familiar to many gardeners and is relatively easy to grow in home gardens. While it is widely used in cooking, its role in the garden extends far beyond the kitchen. Plants in the onion family, such as onions, garlic, and scallions, produce sulfur-based compounds. These compounds are responsible for the strong and recognizable smell associated with these plants. Anyone who has cut an onion or crushed a garlic clove is familiar with this scent. For many insects, this smell can be unpleasant or disruptive to their ability to locate plants. In Japanese gardens, Negi is often planted among vegetables that belong to the cabbage family. Crops such as cabbage, kale, broccoli, and other leafy greens tend to attract a range of insect pests. Certain moths and flies lay their eggs near the base of these plants. Once the eggs hatch, the larvae may feed on roots or leaves and damage young plants. When onion family plants grow near these vegetables, the sulfur compounds they release can interfere with the chemical signals that pests use to locate their host plants. Agricultural studies have suggested that interplanting allium species with brassica crops can help reduce pest pressure in those areas. Japanese gardeners often use a simple pattern to apply this principle. Within a bed of cabbage or kale, a small cluster of onions is planted every few vegetable plants. When onion plants are evenly distributed throughout the bed, their scent spreads across the growing area and makes it more difficult for pests to locate specific plants. Some gardeners also plant a continuous row of onions along the outer edges of a vegetable bed. This will function as a natural barrier. As insects enter the area, they encounter the strong aroma of onion plants first. This can discourage them or make it harder for them to navigate toward their preferred crops. Onions also offer practical advantages in the garden. They are generally hardy plants that can adapt to different soil conditions. They require relatively little space and can grow alongside many vegetables without causing competition for light or nutrients. Because of these qualities, onion family plants are a simple and practical companion for many crops. Traditional Japanese gardens rarely rely on a single plant to create balance. Instead, they combine multiple layers of natural support within the same garden space. One layer may come from aromatic herbs like shiso. Another layer may come from onion family plants. Yet another layer can be created by certain flowering plants that interact with insects in different ways. One of the flowers often used in such gardens is the chrysanthemum. In many cultures, chrysanthemums are grown mainly for their beauty. However, certain species of chrysanthemum contain natural compounds that affect insects. These compounds are known as pyrethrins. Scientists have studied them extensively because they form the basis of many natural insect control products. Interestingly, even when chrysanthemum plants grow naturally in a garden without being processed, they can still influence the surrounding insect environment. In traditional gardens, chrysanthemums are sometimes planted along the borders of vegetable beds. As the plants grow, they release small amounts of natural compounds into the air. These compounds may make the surrounding area less attractive to certain insect pests. Chrysanthemum flowers also provide another benefit. Their blossoms attract a variety of beneficial insects that feed on nectar and pollen. These beneficial insects can then remain in the garden and contribute to natural pest management. When vegetables, herbs, and flowers grow together in this way, the garden becomes a more diverse and stable ecosystem. Instead of depending on a single solution, the garden relies on multiple natural interactions that help maintain balance. When many different plants grow together in the same garden space, they create more than just visual variety. They also create a diversity of scents, food sources, and habitats for insects. This diversity opens the door to another important strategy that has been used in traditional Japanese gardens. Instead of focusing only on repelling pests, gardeners also work to attract beneficial insects that naturally control pest populations. In natural ecosystems, there is usually a balance between different species. When one type of insect feeds on plants, there is often another species that feeds on that insect. These natural predators help prevent pest populations from growing too rapidly. When a garden provides the right environment, these beneficial insects can remain in the area and become a permanent part of the garden ecosystem. One plant commonly used to attract beneficial insects is edamame, also known as immature soybean. This plant is popular in Japanese cuisine, but it also serves an important role in the garden. When edamame plants begin to flower, they produce small blossoms that provide nectar and pollen for a variety of insects. Insects such as ladybugs, lacewings, and parasitic wasps are often attracted to these food sources. These insects may arrive to feed on nectar, but they frequently stay within the garden area. Once they establish themselves, they begin to hunt pest insects for food or for laying their eggs. Ladybugs are perhaps the most familiar beneficial insect to many gardeners. A single adult ladybug can consume dozens of aphids in a single day. When a garden offers adequate food sources and shelter, ladybug populations can increase and help reduce aphid numbers naturally. Lacewings are another effective predator that thrives in diverse gardens. The larvae of lacewings are known for feeding on soft-bodied pests, including aphids and small caterpillars. In addition to these visible predators, there are also tiny parasitic wasps that play an important role in pest control. These wasps lay their eggs inside certain pest insects and help regulate pest populations in a natural way. Japanese gardeners often plant edamame near beds of vegetables that tend to attract pests. Rather than filling every space with a single crop, they reserve a portion of the garden for plants that support beneficial insects. Even a small patch of flowering edamame can provide a valuable food source throughout the growing season. In addition to attracting beneficial insects, some plants help disrupt pest navigation by introducing additional scents into the garden environment. One plant often used for this purpose is shungiku, also known as edible chrysanthemum greens. Shungiku has a distinctive aroma and is commonly used in traditional cooking. In the garden, it is often interplanted among vegetables to increase scent diversity. When several plants with different aromas grow together, pest insects have a harder time identifying their preferred host plants. Japanese gardeners typically avoid rigid planting patterns. Instead of separating every crop into its own section, they mix vegetables, herbs, and flowers throughout the garden. A shungiku plant may grow beside tomatoes, while another appears among peppers or beans. This arrangement makes the garden appear more natural and visually interesting. At the same time, it creates a complex environment that is harder for pest insects to navigate. What appears to be a casual mixture of plants is actually a thoughtful approach to increasing biodiversity. When these different elements work together, the garden begins to function as a self-regulating system. Some plants repel pests with strong aromas. Others attract beneficial predators. Additional plants increase overall diversity and complexity in the environment. Together, these elements contribute to a healthier garden that relies less on chemical pest control. Often, the simple act of changing how plants are arranged within a garden can make a noticeable difference. When the garden is designed to support natural ecological relationships, gardeners no longer need to rely solely on reactive pest control methods. As a garden becomes more diverse with plants that repel pests, plants that attract beneficial insects, and plants that introduce a variety of scents, the ecosystem within that garden begins to stabilize. However, many traditional Japanese gardens also include another interesting strategy that helps strengthen this balance. This strategy is known as trap cropping. Trap cropping is based on a very simple but effective idea. Instead of trying to prevent pests from entering the garden entirely, the gardener grows a plant that pests prefer even more than the main crop. When pests arrive, they are drawn to the trap plant and concentrate their activity there rather than spreading across the entire garden. This approach does not attempt to eliminate all pests. Instead, it manages them by directing their attention to a specific location. When pests gather on the trap plant, the gardener can monitor them more easily. In some situations, simply removing the heavily infested trap plant can significantly reduce the number of pests present in the garden. One commonly mentioned example involves the use of nasturtium plants to attract aphids. Aphids are strongly drawn to nasturtium leaves and will often gather there instead of spreading to nearby vegetables. When aphids concentrate on the trap plant, the gardener can trim the affected leaves or allow beneficial insects such as ladybugs to feed on them. Another example involves planting daikon radish near beds of cabbage family vegetables. Certain flea beetles are more attracted to the leaves of radish than to cabbage or kale. By planting radish at the edges of a vegetable bed, pests may gather there first. This helps protect the main crop growing in the center of the garden. Timing is an important factor when using trap crops. In many cases, the trap plants are planted slightly earlier than the main crop. When pests arrive, the trap plants are already established and more attractive as a food source. This increases the likelihood that pests will focus their attention on the trap crop instead of the vegetables that the gardener wishes to protect. Placement is also important. Many gardeners plant trap crops along the borders of their garden beds or at the ends of vegetable rows. This positioning creates a kind of buffer zone that intercepts pests before they reach the main crops. When pests concentrate along the edges, it becomes easier to observe their activity and manage their numbers. When viewed together, these methods reveal an important difference in gardening philosophy. Instead of reacting to pest problems after they appear, the garden is designed in a way that reduces the likelihood of severe pest outbreaks from the beginning. Some plants are chosen because their strong scents disrupt pest navigation. Other plants attract beneficial insects that act as natural predators. Flowers contribute to the overall diversity of the ecosystem and provide nectar for helpful species. Trap crops redirect pest attention away from valuable vegetables. When these strategies work together, the garden begins to function more like a balanced ecological system. Instead of constant intervention, the gardener allows natural relationships between plants and insects to maintain stability. Many people who adopt this approach find that gardening becomes more enjoyable and less stressful. Time that once went into frequent spraying or pest control can be spent observing the garden and supporting its natural processes. Understanding how plants and insects interact transforms the way a garden is perceived. The garden becomes more than a place to grow vegetables. It becomes a small living ecosystem where diversity and balance help keep plants healthy throughout the growing season.